Today we're going to talk about how to estimate renovations, analyze costs. We've got Sam and Charlie from Clear Sky Financial here to talk about that with. We are going to get Charlie and Sam up here to talk about what we all came here for.
Well, thanks for having us, guys. It's funny because I'm usually the one speaking the whole time, and so I'm not going to speak too long and I'll explain it to you in a second how we sort of divide our responsibilities. We've been in this space for 20 years, I guess.
Yeah.
And so we have actually conquered Mount Rushmore. We started out as normal retail agents. We built a pretty big book of business as retail agents under Green Dot. We were pretty big during the REO boom. But during that period of time, we were investing in fixing and flipping houses and also building up our rental portfolio. And so over a period of time, we were able to grow our companies into something that's pretty decent size today. And so who we are, Clear Sky Group, we have a company called Clear Sky Properties. We still fix and flip 2 to 3 houses a month under that umbrella. As a matter of fact, we've just recently bought, between April and May, we just recently bought 4 houses, or in the process of buying 4 out of a couple of them. We have a rental portfolio because along the way, instead of fixing and flipping, we ended up keeping a bunch. So right now, we're probably at around 50 properties on the rental side. We own an industrial parking lot by Manassas Airport. It's a 3-acre piece of industrial property, so we're in the commercial game. We got a couple commercial properties. We also have another company called Clear Sky Financial. That's how you guys pretty much will know us. We're what's called a hard money lender, a private lender. We lend to fix and flip investors. We have fix and flip renovate loans, because one of our bigger sets of clients these days are contractors, because a lot of contractors are finding fix and flip deals. And so instead of doing contracting work for clients, they're also being able to double dip. They're able to make their normal contract premium plus get the profit off the fix and flip. So a lot of contractors are entering into the fix and flip space. And that's pretty much our biggest growth area in Clear Sky Financial. The way it's set up is that we have a 506B and a 506C fund. So we're also fund managers. It's basically a pooled investment fund. Each fund is populated with about $30 million each. And that's how we're able to fund all these projects. I am the gatekeeper. I make most of the decisions on the money. If there's some marginal deals, like the marina we're about ready to deal, Sam will jump in and we'll do it together. The bigger the deal, we kind of partner in on that. We're a direct lender in DC, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, and Florida. Like I said, it's all our own money. We're able to pivot fairly quickly. We can close deals in a week or less, and that's why people like using us. The last company that we have is Clear Sky Holdings, and basically that company is around because we do tax lien certificate investing. Maryland, PG County, Montgomery County, and DC, we actually buy these things called tax lien certificates. They pay out a very nice return, and if you do it right, you might get the property at the end of the game. So we also do that. And that also does hard money lending. We do own another commercial property called Clear Sky Auto. And so before I turn it over to Sam, one of the things I want to also talk about is the 3 ingredients to this business, right? I don't care if you're doing commercial. I don't care if you're doing residential. The first thing that you got to do is you got to find them, right? So I think last month Ben talked about finding the assets. So that's the key, is finding the assets. Now what's, of course, the second key? The second key is how do you find the money? And so between those two things, finding the assets and finding the money, that's where it's all about. But then more importantly than finding the money is how do you do the renovations? That's the third ingredient to this mix. So if you can learn to do those 3 ingredients, then you guys have got what it takes. And so today, Sam is going to present on how to do the estimates, how to do the renovations, because the way our work is divided is I go and find everything. I go and find the houses to buy. I go and find whatever else to buy, and I go get the loans. But then Sam is on the other side of the business, just executing. That's what he's doing. And so he is actually doing all of our fix and flip renovations. He's doing all of our rental renovations. He's doing all that stuff. And so not me, he is the expert on this. I mean, I've gotten to be an expert on it too, where I can go and I can look at 20 or 30 pictures and I can say, oh, it's going to cost you about $80,000 renovation. I'm good, but he's great. So I'm going to turn it over to Sam, and he is going to go through this. All right?
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yay.
So we do have a lot of different things going on and a lot of different operations. But for all of the fix and flips and all of the draws, people reach out to me, as Charlie said, to talk to me about process control, costs, all manner of things. And one of the things I think Charlie started to touch on is the first ingredient is finding the asset and getting a good buy. And that's it. You have to make your money on the buy side. When you get to the cost component, the renovation component of it, you already had a budget in mind when you bought it, right? So you just have to work to keep it there or lower. I mean, that's your goal, right? You're not going to achieve some great value opportunity when the renovation is $50,000 renovation on a $500,000 house. I mean, maybe you could save $10,000, and maybe you could spend an extra $10,000. But if you didn't get a good deal on the house, that isn't going to make any difference at all. But so you have to be able to control the costs and execute in a timely way and avoid significant pitfalls like permit issues and zoning issues and legal issues that are going to catch you later when you go to sell the asset. But we'll cover some of that. So repeated experience, I don't think Charlie mentioned how many houses we've flipped. I think we've flipped 450 houses at this point. So it's been a lot of houses, and most of them have been in Prince William. We've gone up into D.C., Prince George's County, Montgomery County, but I'd say centered in Virginia, you know, if you had to pick a hotspot. Most of our rental portfolio is in Virginia. And we're going to talk about scope of work next, talk a little bit about what we're doing, right? Every time you approach a project, whether you have a multifamily project, which we don't really do much of, we have done condos and things like that, or whether you have a rental or a wholesale, which is a concept of just getting it ready to sell to an investor. Whether you're dressing the pig, there's Charlie's words there, but you know, just dressing up the house enough to sell it, or whether it's a full gut renovation. We've done plenty of those. These are all, or an addition or expansion. These are all, you're entering into the project thinking about the scope, right? So you've got a budget, the budget's $50,000. That's probably like, you know, like a dressing the pig renovation. You're not going to get a brand new house for $50,000 in this region. So you say you got a budget you're working with, you're sort of figuring it out. You're figuring out this scope when you're buying the house, right? Because you don't want to go in thinking you're going to just do a rental grade and then it ends up being a full gut renovation. This is like going to kill your budget. So you have to think of that at the time of purchase. So we're just going to talk a little bit about like some of the projects that we've worked on. This is in DC. This was a full gut renovation. So this is a nice property. There's just no question about it. When you see it, you know it. We executed against like coffered ceilings, all the higher end appliances, you know, big burners, and you know, a lot of uniformity. All the spaces match. The doors match the ceiling. This was a total disaster home when we got it. I don't even know. We had pictures of that. It was unbelievable. There was a body in the basement of this house under the furnace, and then the police didn't want to investigate. It was a whole story.
We found the bones.
We found the bones, and we called the police that there were bones, and then they were like, we don't have time for bones in D.C. So, but you see a lot of stuff. But this is in the scope. We got this one. The scope was going to be a full gut renovation the whole time we got it. But we'll talk about what's easier to execute in a second. If you're implementing a full gut renovation, this is like a simple thing. You're clearing the slate altogether of the house, and then you're replacing it with some other stuff. You can measure this pretty readily. This isn't an abstraction like, oh, maybe I could fix something up a little bit. You know you're going to go down to the studs. You're going to redo everything in the house.
What do we spend, 180, 200?
Yeah, in that area. And that was before prices really went up. Yeah. So this is a more modest home in this area. And then you just see that this is a simple flip. This is a little beyond dressing the pig. The house was a bit of a wreck. It was all wallpapered, and we ended up going through it and re-drywalling everything instead of taking the wallpaper off because it was so much wallpaper. It was unbelievable. But it is a very basic renovation. You could see the implementation is a simple shaker, the cabinets. If I were to hire you as a contractor, I'd show you this picture and I'd let you do your work. I wouldn't come and say, oh, I got to pick out subway tile. You just find some subway tile that's good, and when it's clean and implemented, it'll look like this. If you don't do a job that's appropriate, we'll know that the subway tile is going to be all wonky looking, and we're just never going to be able to sell that house with that kind of implementation. But if we do a little backsplash, it's a lower budget property. We were talking about stoves. It has a back to the stove. The counter's not even granite, but it sold really well, this house. So it's just a different scope.
We did a house where we put the laminate almost looked the exact same as that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not terrible.
Yeah,
It's not great.
it was in, we didn't use
Yeah.
granite. So.
Yeah, and that's an important point, because it all depends on your asset type, right? If you're in an entry-level market in Manassas Park, or even in Manassas, if it's a townhouse, where the out price is going to be 280 to 310, you don't want to dress it up like that first set of pictures where we did a full gut renovation on Q Street, Northwest DC, right? And so, and same thing with the rental grade, guys. If you're going to keep the property and rent it out, shoot, we don't even do that. We just get it pretty much functioning. And then we put a tenant in there, and everything is low grade, a high wear and tear, and that's how we do it. So it all depends on your asset type, and I think that's probably what you're about ready to get into, but that's one of the things.
Yeah, and certainly for rentals, you can do a lower grade finish because you're going to be replacing it, but the systems, you want the windows to be solid. You don't want to deal with them ever again. Just get new windows, new roof, new HVAC, everything working once, so no one's calling you. New appliances. Don't even bother trying to salvage old stuff. Now, when you turn it over, you're going to paint it, you're going to carpet it, and maybe you're going to use some floors like this so you don't have to deal with carpet, save you on cost. Here we're looking at, like this, I was saying, which one's harder to deal with? Well, you think that one on the left is, instinctively I would think, okay, that's going to be an easier property to deal with. It's a clean bathroom, like, okay. But actually, this bathroom that was used for like a drug house was much easier to deal with, because we just eliminated this bathroom and put a new one in for like $5,000. This one over here, we bought the house, and there's a consideration, like they think there's value in this bathroom, but this bathroom is functionally obsolete. It's fine if that's in my house. We're only me and my wife are using it. No one cares. But when you're going to sell that house, absolutely no one wants to live in 1985 again. So you got to deal with it. And that's a completely functional working bathroom that's totally dated in a house that's going to sell for $850,000. Absolutely no one wants. So I'm going to have to eliminate that wall, reconfigure it for a freestanding tub, do all kinds of things in it. And this turns out to be a much, much more expensive project than the house that's just a wreck. You're going to get a much better value point on your wrecked house than you will on your like quasi out-of-dated house. That's just an important consideration when you're looking at scope when you go to buy these properties. And of course, if you're not doing it yourself physically, it doesn't really matter what it looks like, right, in terms of the work effort. It's just numbers on a page. So here's another, which one's harder to deal with, right? This is the same problem set we have here, except the pictures are flipped. So the one on the left is a completely ruined kitchen. There's just absolutely nothing to salvage in it, and you could go right to the walls and throw it all away. The one on the right, when I saw the pictures of it, we recently bought this house, if you remember. If you notice it, we're trying to wholesale this house at this moment, but we're going to probably do a full renovation. You go in this house, and that kitchen.
Is that Dave?
That's Dave. Yeah,
okay.
This is one we have on Dave. We just listed it 2 days ago as is to sell it. You go into this house, and you almost think that kitchen could be kept until you walk around it a little bit, and the counters are Corian, and they're mismatched to the cabinets, which are barely sort of holding together, and the appliances are sort of odd sizes, like old or narrow appliance sets. And it's another tricky thing, right? Do you paint these, change the handle sets, and add granite and some new appliances, but then you're left with like these beat cabinets, or you just remove everything, and now you're into a whole new scope of work. You got to do a backsplash and this, that, and the other. So same problem, scope, and thinking about this before you get started is the best thing ever. Yeah. So, and we're saying here we have a smaller project. So this is on a rental house that we've had in our portfolio for quite a while. And it recently turned over. The tenant had been really hard on the house, but she had never asked for any repairs, and she was a fine tenant for many years. when I got there, and I came across this front window. And so we're up against the problem. Well, the window was really functional, but the house has just terrible curb appeal with that older window when you compare it to some of the other houses. And so we started looking at replacing the window, at this time, because we were doing a renovation and we want to deliver it into like the highest of the rental market. So this window, you could replace it with a flat window. It'd be quite a lot less expensive, but ultimately we have to sort of weigh the cost. Do we do a $2,500 window? Do we do sort of a halfway job at a $3,500? We put a $4,500 window in, and there it is afterwards. But this is just on a rental. Like the rental was cycling through a long part of a cycle, right? It hadn't been renovated in 15 years, like fully renovated. So we did this now. So if we come upon selling it again, first of all, it's going to rent for a lot more, and that window is going to be good for 30 years. So by the time we sell it, that's going to still have a nice character to it, and we'll get that moving. So people will have the benefit of more efficient property and also, more curb appeal. These kind of smaller projects can run into some significant cost, because when you're turning over a rental, you don't really want to spend $4,500 on a window. But if you're doing a major overhaul of your rental, you'll sort of figure it out. Okay, this is going to be like 30 grand to get this place straightened out. And then we're going to get way higher rent, and our asset value is going to be way up.
Did we have any supply chain issues with that?
Yeah, so for this one, we wanted an in-stock window because we didn't want to order it for 8 weeks and then have them come and try to do it after the new tenant is in and whatnot. So our contractor went around and he looked everywhere for a window that would fit it, that's in stock. So he had found one that was on sale, had been a lot less expensive, but the brick was like an inch too narrow, so he couldn't utilize it. So anyhow, he had to go and find this one that was available in stock, quite a bit higher price, and we just moved forward with that. So yeah, the supply chain issue, the speed of execution makes a huge difference in our cost. Like, so we're going to carry it another month without a tenant for $2,700 waiting on this window for months. Like, we have a project in DC that we took over from someone. They didn't have the windows. We had to order the windows. The windows have a long lead time. We're just sitting on our hands with that project. So supply chain's a big concern, and I know speed to completion really is important to consider. You get into some larger projects. I was at this site today. These pictures are from a day or two. The picture on the left is maybe 3 weeks ago. Picture on the right, now we're framed up to 2 stories. This is a house we're building right behind Arlington Hospital. And these are much bigger scope projects, right? And much more intensive on soft costs. Like, you're looking at architectural work, engineering work, a lot of talking to the local zoning people, doing plans, permits. This is a very long lead time project. You don't want to take on, at an early stage in your investment life cycle, any large projects. I wouldn't take on anything with an addition, anything with another level. I wouldn't definitely not build a house. But if you get farther enough along, you end up dealing with this sort of thing. And then there's a lot of interaction with the contractor on something like this as you're trying to control costs and make sure the space is something that's going to be marketable when you're done. Because the plans look like one thing, and then they start building, and you're like, yeah, we can change the insides. We need to make some changes. And before you know it, you're back with the engineers slowing things down. So this isn't something to just jump into.
Is that just one house?
This is a single house, yeah. So
what's the address? 17?
It's on North Edison.
1729 North Edison?
Yes, you go down North Edison right behind the hospital,
You can't
you'll
miss
find it. So what's interesting, to some degree, is that you see these old walls here. This had to be kept in order to have the existing footprint of the house. So we started this project, and we had plans to build off of the existing footprint of the house, and we had some exceptions for coming out. The BZA allowed us to come out a little bit and this and that. Well, as soon as we took the house down and we're going to leave the walls, we found that the house didn't have any concrete foundation. So it delayed us 3-4 months while they approved a concrete slab for the construction. And then we had to fabricate these walls again. These are like the old walls, theoretically. And they had to remain, and we had to work from the inside out so we didn't disrupt the neighbor's property. So this was here we are, just building the foundation. This was later packed with insulation, filled in, and then they started going up with the framing. Our first flip in DC, we followed we bought that house. What was that first one in DC we got? And it didn't have foundation walls at all.
Right.
We bought that house. So, yeah, a lot of house. And we bought that.
You got to do underpins too.
Oh yeah.
That is all day long.
We got
and that one that I showed you on it. Yeah.
Yeah, we got hijacked by a neighbor for $30,000 because we were doing a 3-unit condo conversion on Staple Street in Trinidad. And so right before we were getting our permits, our neighbor was nice enough to put solar panels on his roof. So he put solar panels on his roof knowing that we were going to come in there and do a 3-unit condo conversion. And so we had to do two things. We had to slim down our design, but we also had to take it down because of his solar panels, because of the sun. And then we had to also underpin his property.
Yeah.
And we also had to do something to his roof
Yes.
because of snow load issues.
Yeah, yeah.
And then he hit us up for $30,000.
So we also, and this isn't uncommon in DC, on Holbrook where we're working,
Whole different animal in
on Holbrook where we're working, which is around the corner, the same circumstance happened. The neighbor just was aware and then, requested some cash to get it moving.
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm not sure. It can,
Yeah, but that's why this whole thing is near and dear to our heart, because obviously from the renovation standpoint on the fix and flips, right, it's pretty straightforward. But for us, just as important, if not more importantly, we have to understand every aspect of the renovation for our borrowers, because not only do we got to keep us safe, we've got to keep our borrowers safe. And there are so many times where we have vehemently disagreed with their renovation budget. As a matter of fact, I'm going through one of those deals right now in Canton. Do you guys know Canton in Baltimore, right next to the Inner Harbor? So Canton is so you got the Inner Harbor kind of circles around, and then Canton is right next to it. Very high dollar properties. Well, this one particular person is buying an N unit row home. They want to pop the top. They want to put a rooftop deck. It was built in 1920s and it needs a full renovation. And so we get a renovation budget today of $125,000. We're like, the hell it is.
yeah.
First of all, they supposedly have plans and permits, but they're giving us a $125,000 renovation budget, but they haven't even seen the plans yet. So this happens to us quite a bit on a daily basis.
People just want to get into that. They want
Right.
to be in the deal. So they'll be like, oh, I can do it for this. And they have really no basis for their numbers. They have no experience. They have no contracting bids. So that does happen with a lot of frequency, like every day.
Yeah, every day. And so if we're not on top of the renovation budgets and understanding the full scope of the renovations in different areas and understanding the processes of different governments, we can get hurt. And so that's why this is really, really important to us.
And we work really closely with the borrowers to understand what's going on in their project during the draw cycle. So we give a pre-draw. So if a person starts a project, they have money at the start of the project to start their contractor, get some plans and permits in place. And then they have a budget with us at that time. By the time the second draw comes, we have to have a complete budget that shows by draw what we're going to see completed, because you're not going to get draw 2 unless draw 1's task list is done. And draw 1 is not just general conditions. It's got to be like something specific that's achieved. So then we're looking at the project. I come out and visit it on site. I might do that at first. Depends on the scope of work or what's going on. And we stay closely in touch about where they are. And then if things get sort of hung up, like we've got one in Maryland with Eric's property.
Oh, God.
He's been hung up for more than a year with the Prince George's County Planning and Permitting Office. He just yesterday got through, he can close all his walls.
Right.
Because he had a foundation problem. He was instructed to repair the foundation. When he did the repair, the inspector came out and said it was all in good repair, except that now it's a new house construction and not a repaired construction. So you have to do a new site plan, you have to do everything brand new. And, and so he had to start over again in that process. And he hadn't planned that in any way with his budget and so forth. So we're trying to work with him through the whole process and understand every aspect of it. Because I don't want to go take the property back from him. I certainly don't want to do that work. And he has plenty of equity to get. So, but we still have to find a balance where we can get paid and we can know that we're going to get paid, and he can get out of it and make some money in the end. So he's going to sell the house for $800,000.
That particular one was a 1-year loan.
Yeah.
And it's turning into a 4 or 5 year loan.
Yeah.
And so basically, for the layman, for the folks that haven't done much in here, that doesn't have much experience, what you have to understand, especially with this project here, there's two things in these jurisdictions. It's much easier to get permits done if you have an existing house, right? So what's an existing house means? It means maybe a foundation and a wall. Like for Arlington, that's a definition for Arlington. So we were able to get the permits approved because it's an existing house. Well, this one particular borrower did the same thing. He got his plans and permits approved, saying it was an existing house. But like Sam said, once the inspector came out, looked at that foundation, he deemed this as a new home build and had to restart. And anytime you get caught up in that, guys, it's troubling. Now, for us, we're going to end up being lucky. And I do say lucky because I would rather be good than lucky. In this case, we're absolutely lucky because by the time that he was doing this house in that 4-year period of time, the damn market's skyrocketed.
Yeah.
So the fact that we've had huge market appreciation, we're lucky. We're not good.
Bailed us out, all out, him and us.
Yeah, we're lucky. Not good.
Because
We'd
he
rather
would have
be good,
just thrown the keys back to us.
Which happened on...
This is why we're here in this case. This guy, he called and he said, this is going to be a simple permit process. I said, man, I'm not so sure. You're in Arlington, and there's a lot of control there. There's a lot of control. He's like, I've got it on lock. I'm going to do it. We're going to have it. It's going to look like the neighbor's house. I've got these plans. We're going to get them approved. And
he was a general contractor / builder. He knew what he was doing.
He knew what he's doing. He totally knew what he's doing. And he got his plans, and they put him in such a long spin cycle on getting the plans approved. By the time he got them approved, he only had to pay the fee for the plans. That was all that was left, and the plans were ready. He called, and he made every payment on time. He put $100,000 into the project when he started. He said, I think that this is going to kill me. I'm going to just give you the keys back if you'll just release me. So that's fine. So we took it back, and we finished it. And we're finishing it now. And maybe it would have killed him, I don't know. But it's been some significant work. We took it back maybe in October. Right.
Yeah. I mean,
and to do this, like, basically 1 month of work, it took us 5 months to get started with the county over there.
Yep.
Even though the plans were approved, it's just hard to believe. But
yeah, because what had happened in that 1.5 to 2 year period of time, remember, this was a time when lumber tripled in price, right? So you had lumber, you had supplies skyrocketing, you had labor going up, and you also had supply chain issues. And so he had put $100,000 up, plus he had made us 12 or 13 $8,000 a month payments in a row, right? Because we had an interest-only hard money loan against it. And even at that point in time, he surprisingly came and it's called jingle mail. Said, here, guys, here's the keys, because if I spend another $250 or $300 that it's going to take to finish this house, I'm going to lose money on it, more so than what I did. So you guys take it over. Now, that's not what we do, even though that's kind of what we do, because being a private lender, one of the things you've got to be able to do is you've got to be prepared to take any and all assets back, but then you could either wholesale them or REO them, real estate owned, sell it to investors and lose money, or we got to have the ability to be able to execute on that property and get our money back, right? So, I mean, we're going to finish this project. We're going to be into it for 1.25 million, probably 1.3. We'll probably get 1.6 out of it.
yeah.
But you guys are shaking your heads like, oh, you're going to make some money, but not really, because
No.
we're going to lose opportunity costs on all that money. So we're definitely going to get our principal back, but we'll probably get a couple $100,000 back. But that's lost opportunity costs on that money that we could be lending out to other clients. So we just have to note that.
Yeah, so we own this in cash. So
Yeah.
that ties up a bunch of money we
Yep.
can't utilize elsewhere and get our normal return on in a much more efficient transactional way. This is really labor intensive. Now, the guys who were doing this project started with us on our very first flip. Well, not our very first flip, but they were in the first few. And they didn't know at all what they were doing when they started, and they didn't have a license or nothing. So they started with really minimal flips and learning how to build walls and frame stuff. And then it went from licensed electricians to licensed general contractors to having a team and then supporting us while we did a lot of renovations. Now all these guys are a little bit older, they're a little bit slower, but they're very skilled at what they're doing. So you're paying a lot more for these guys, but they can execute against this project. They're not the same people that we would have handle like turning over the rental portfolio. That is we have a couple guys who work for us. We call them the slow crew. They're really nice with the clients. The tenants will call them directly even instead of going through us. It's all fine. They have great relationships that they build up, and it adds a lot of value. We have almost no turnover in our rental portfolio, and that's in part because we can call the slow crew, and at the time of water leak, something happens, they're there the same night, and they get it under control, calm everyone down, and so that's really valuable. And in between that, we have people who will come in and do more rapid flips of midline properties. So the people are in different spaces in the contracting world, and you sort of have to figure out where they are. You want them to be successful, so you have to know what they're capable of and where their costs are.
Yeah, and we want to stress, too, that one guy in the picture has been with Mauricio for 20 years.
Yeah.
And so as you guys are moving along in your investment careers, you've got to build your all-star team. I can't stress how Mauricio and his crew, that's part of our all-star team.
Oh, yeah.
They're now up to 20 W-2s, and they can and they expand with us. So the more projects they have, they can just sub it out if we overburden them and give them too much work. So by having these guys, they know that once we turn over a flip project, we don't have to do anything because they know our finishes. They know what we're trying to do. The only time that we really got to meet with these guys is if we're moving the walls around, we're redoing floor plans, we're popping the top, we're doing this, we're doing that. That's when we have to meet them. So what I'm trying to stress to you guys is the number one thing that you guys got to do is be loyal to your contractor. Up front, it might cost you a little bit more money, but that loyalty will pay off downstream because it's going to allow you to expand. It's going to allow you to do more things because you guys won't worry as much. Because we used to always be worried about our renovations. But hell, I mean, everything is just plug and play with us right now. We don't worry about a single thing. We've got guys here building this house for us, and we are not at all worried at all what kind of job they're going to do.
Oh, no.
They're going to do a slam dunk job because those guys did the same. When he showed you the first pictures on Q Street with the coffered ceilings and all that stuff and nice appliances, that nice work, that's those guys who did it. But they couldn't have done that stuff 20 years ago.
No chance.
Oh, they were awful.
Yeah, they were like our slow crew. Yeah.
But they grew with us.
They did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is that they're all a good contractor or any vendor or any person who's working with you or for you is going to try to over deliver, right? You're going to be happy to pay them at the end. You're not going to be in a struggle. If you find yourself in a struggle to pay your contractor, like, oh, I don't think it's of that much value or whatever. This may not be like a perfect fit for you on a long-term basis. It may have worked once. Maybe you need to look elsewhere. But if your contractor is coming to you with ideas and they're a little over delivering and, they clean up outside when they said they were just going to do the inside job and you're seeing more than you expected, then you're going to be like, oh, okay, can I make a payment and get this going and keep this relationship going? So keeping the relationship going is not having your contractor necessarily nag you for a payment. That's not going to be a great way to have a long-term relationship, right? You have to be timely. So, there's not a time when they call and a person calls for us for a draw where we don't have the money ready for them because we know that at the other end, there's a contractor waiting and that relationship depends on the timeliness of it. And usually like a first time or first two flipper, they're not thinking so far in advance that they need to get ready for the draw. They're calling you the day the contractor asked and they send you photos. So you need to be really timely and deliver funds. And the same if you're an individual and you're working with a contractor, you need to pay them. So how do we deal with estimation? And there's a number of different ways. So I'm sure you've seen spreadsheets that have estimation management, and then you just go by the per square foot. So a lot of things can be done this way. You could understand how much it would cost to sheetrock a whole house using a per square foot and sort of average costs. You can use different average cost books you can find and get a ballpark. But it's not entirely effective on flips where you've got those in-between properties where you can improve them to a degree because you don't know how much of a degree you need to improve them, how much you can salvage. So the per square foot works a lot better when you're doing like a total renovation. But when you're doing a house that you're sort of dressing up, you might want to tell the person that you've got a $50,000 budget. Tell the contractor you've got a $50,000 budget. What could you cover in the scope of a $50,000 budget that needs to be done here? And then you sort of go through the house and say, well, I absolutely need to get new counters. I need new HVAC. We could salvage the cabinets, or we're looking at the driveway. A lot of ways to do a driveway. So when you're buying a house that's from us, we want you to have a product that at least the driveway is going to be decent for 5 to 10 years, right? That it's not like misrepresented, that it's sort of shiny but not functional for that period of time. But to get a 5 to 10 year driveway, there's a couple ways. You could do it like you do at your own house. You just pull out the whole driveway and put in a nice one with this really solid foundation. It's going to last 20 years as standard driveway length. But all you need is 5 to 7 years. So maybe you can sort of scrape back half the driveway, compact it, and then do 2 inches over part of it, and then a full driveway over the rest, and sort of do a partial, right? And I've done this even in my own house before we get to ripping out everything. Sort of the in-between point. And the difference is on this house on Dave Drive that we just looked at, the difference is a brand new driveway is going to be, say, $25,000 to $30,000, and a driveway that's going to last 5 to 10 years without any problems is going to be more like $13,000. So you have to think it, and I could probably find someone to do it for $8,000, and it probably wouldn't last too long, and the edges would sort of break. When you put your boat on it, it would collapse. And you don't want to deliver product like that. We're in business a long time. We don't want people calling back and saying, hey, I've got a problem. I can't, 2 years later, or, something like this. So you want to be able to not get those callbacks because we're still in business and our reputation's out there. And I think in the end, you see the finished quality difference too when you get to a property, if it's been properly put back together. So this is one tool of estimate management, and I don't use this tool too much because I've done this a lot of times. I used this type of tool a lot initially, and now I'm into more rounded figures. Like I go into a house and I say, okay, the floors are going to be about $6,000 in this 2,000 square foot house. We're going to do some carpet and everywhere. And then if I'm going to do new click floors, I'm going to say, okay, well, that's going to be probably put me about $12,000 for the whole thing. So we're just sort of doing a rounder numbers, but that's because I have greater level of experience paying the bills. So then we get to thinking about like how are we doing the tasks? How are we getting them done? They have to be done in some sort of order, and that's what we have as a draw schedule. And a draw schedule will break down all the individual items I'm going to get permits and dumpsters and do site prep, and then I'm going to put those probably in draw 1, and then later on in draw 4 I'm going to have the appliances. So we're trying to stage out the project and understand what can be seen and done, and this helps people manage their project. So they've got the cost control they're managing, and then they've got the delivery of the project they're managing, and both of those are pretty important to the process. But not as important as really understanding where the whole profitability of the project is. And this is a project that we just did on Greendale. It's a live enough example. We purchased it in November. You can't see this too well. We purchased it in November of last year, and we sold it in January of this year. And we spent a total at the bottom.
It was a one level.
$21,000.
Yeah, it was a one level golf course villa condo over there. A 1-car garage. It was about, Sam? About 2,400 square feet.
Yeah.
3 bedrooms, 2 baths.
Yeah.
And it was in pretty decent shape.
Yeah, we got hit with a surprise at the end. The HVAC was completely gone and had to be replaced.
Yeah, well, how much did that cost?
$3,900. So it's a percentage of the total $21,000 budget that we had there. That's a pretty high. Then that again goes to
15%?
like 20%,
15%.
Yeah, I mean you need a 20% physical cost overrun, and that's a perfect example. This is still a very profitable project. Now, so we call this number, I call it the CJE number because Charlie invented it, but what we're doing is just determining the return off of the sale price of the house. And
What is it?
This is 11% in this
11%,
model.
yeah.
So the total sale out price on the thing was $432. So we made $48,000 on this.
Yeah.
house.
So this particular one was a courthouse buy. I won at one of the auctions in Prince William County. And one of the things that we do, guys, especially if you're going to get into the fix and flip game, you're going to have your expenses, your buy costs, right? Your selling, closing costs, your holding costs, obviously your renovation costs. But the most important cost that you need to put in there is your profit margin, and keep that as a cost.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's why we're in business, right? Is to make money. And so when Sam talks about our margins, we have goals. And so like in Virginia, our fix and flip margins between 8 and 12%. If we can't get between 8 and 12%, then we just move on. And 8% is actually kind of low, because if you only had a slim 8% profit margin, any run up in your renovation is going to sink you. Any change in the marketplace is going to sink you. So some of our worst, now best buys, we call them rentals, because the market, it was a slim buy, profit margin wise. The market changed a little bit. Renovation scope might have changed a little bit. And so we were breaking even. So we just said, heck with it. We're going to keep it in our rental portfolio. Now, of course, it's great.
Yeah.
But back then it wasn't so great. And so in Virginia, we run an 8 to 12% profit margin. If you're in Maryland, especially on the PG County side where the inventory is a little bit older, especially the neighborhoods that border DC, our target margin is between 15 and 20%. And in DC, our target is between 20 and 30% profit margin. Because if I'm renovating a property in Petworth that's a 1920 row home that needs a full gut $210,000 renovation,
A lot of time.
we had better be trying to make a lot of money, or else it's not worth our time. And so that's just the way we do it, right? You guys don't have to do it that way, but I would suggest your rule of thumb on your expense side in the equation, you've got to put your targeted profit margin. Yeah.
In some way, we buy a little margin ourselves because we're brokers and we have brokers.
Oh, yeah.
So we're buying 2.5% of that. So if you weren't a broker and you did this, you'd be down in the 8 range. And this is good execution of 60 days. I mean, that's from the day we bought it to the day it's sold. So even with a slow crew, that was good execution. But
That's also why it was so cheap.
It was so cheap, right? They did paint. We subbed out the carpet to someone else. We subbed out the HVAC. But we have all these guys like on speed dial, and they are happy to work with us. The HVAC guy has been working with us. He's way into his retirement, but we're his last client. He's
20 plus years too.
Yeah. Yeah. He's an older guy. So that's part of our team. Mentioning our team there, we have the general contractor. I guess we showed you one of our guys. The tradesmen, talking about our HVAC guys and the carpet people, the handyman people, and we have engineers and architects that we work with. They're hard to find. They're hard to get efficient use out of. So if you get to that stage, that's like a whole nother level. When you're thinking about the contracting budget and your soft cost, that would be the cost of permits, the cost of any kind of engineering. You really have to like triple your costs, because all the soft costs just have a way of exploding with professional costs. Usually they don't get it right the first time. There's something the county asks for. There's something like this, and it really drives up those costs fast. The hard cost, just like on that simple one we looked at, you have to have a 20% contingency. Like when you're thinking about the project, you think it's going to be 18,000 and then it's going to be 23. You got to be thinking like in terms of that. And it doesn't happen every time. And a lot of times you'll save a little bit of money, but sometimes you'll find mold or something problematic, and it'll be even more than that. So you pick your contractor based on reputation, not just price. So like a person who can counsel you on the most effective way to get a good product is much more valuable than your lowest price provider. The lowest price provider may not be timely as well. If they're offering low prices to a lot of people, they could be in a lot of demand. They need to be familiar, if you're doing anything with a permit, with your jurisdiction, having done work there before. And they need to know how to contain themselves and carry themselves in a way that doesn't aggravate the neighbors. You don't want to find that when you go talk to the neighbor that they've been playing really loud music while they've been doing construction and agitate these neighbors. The neighbors call the inspectors, and it just becomes a whole thing. So they have to be very, very respectful and reasonable people that you're working with. So try to minimize your scope of work. Know about what you need in your market for building code. You can get a fast little building code handbook on Amazon for $30. Know about permits, what you'll need. Talk to your contractor about it. Keep building the relationships with the vendor so the vendor becomes autonomous. They know what the product you want, the quality you want, the speed. You understand how they get paid. It all works efficiently. So be very present for them. and show up on the construction site. Don't let a large or a small job just go unattended. Like even with the people that you know well, you have to come over and have some interaction with them. You don't have to, maybe you bring them lunch, but you don't have to have lunch with them. You have to be there, bring them a coffee, figure it out, look at it, see if there's going to be something that you can help with. You ask them if they have everything they need, if the budget's adequate, if they need a sub to come in and fix something, what needs to be done. And then, of course, those three things when you're managing your costs, looking at your overall profitability, your budget, and how you're calculating it. Those are really critical. So that's, in a nutshell, construction management in the flip world. Does anyone have experience with any of these kind of issues? I know we were talking earlier, but does anyone why don't you tell us some of your experiences then?
Well, Mark does all of our work.
You're on the spot now, Mark.
Everything you said, did us.
You're on the spot. Yeah.
Well, after you said you have any problems with me going in there to work, you don't even have to really check up on me but so much.
I'm there every
Yeah,
day.
and I send them videos. Really?
No, I go there for content. Every time I go, it's something different. I'm
Right.
like, I got all this done in one day.
I send them videos and everything.
videos.
But when you go, you probably learn something every time, right? Because you're not a general contractor. I mean, you don't know them all these things. I go to a site and the people are showing me the plan still, and I'm like, oh, okay, I can see that now that you're saying that.
Too much to the property.
Yeah, you want to make it like it's way like perfect. I want to make it perfect too, obviously, but like.
Because see, I'm learning too. I'm more of a remodeler, and getting into the flip side, he's like, man, you don't have to do all that, right?
We don't need to put brain in.
I'm learning because I want to be an investor too one day, so I have to learn how to back off a little bit with it.
Don't be like, oh, we should do this and do that and do this. And I'm like, we don't need to do that. Where we're at, we don't need to do that. With a 1 level, 3 bedroom, 1 bath, state streets, or stuff.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, it's all about your asset type. It's all about the market, right? Because something like that, that's an entry-level market, and we know who the buyer is going to be. The buyer's probably going to be an FHA buyer. As long as this thing looks halfway decent, passes all the FHA inspections, I mean, that's probably who the buyer is going to be. And it's going to sell fairly quick if it's priced right anyway. And so the other thing we probably should touch on is, for us, on both sides of the equation, both the fix and flip side and especially the hard money side, is that once a renovation budget comes into us, we want to know how long it's going to take. But one of the ways that we assume how long it's going to take is we just simply go, each $1,000 is going to be 1 day. So if it's a $60,000 budget, it's going to take maximum 2 months. For us, it's more like $2,000 a day. So if I get a $60,000 rental budget, we'll be done in 30 days. But from the hard money standpoint, not knowing, who the contractor is, not knowing how they can execute, we put the longest it should take, right? So if it's 60,000, we'll give them 60 days. We'll give them another 30 days on the market, another 45 days to sell, because that helps us build in the timing of our loans. And so for us, it's very important for us to understand. And that's just kind of a rule of thumb for us. It's not for everybody, but that's just the way we do it.
It works pretty well. If you think about how many folks do you have on your crew?
4 people.
Yeah.
4 or 5 guys on site. Now, if I put 15 people on site, would I suddenly get 3 times the amount of work done at your site? You think I would?
Yeah, but then I ain't gonna make any money.
So something's happening there where it's not as efficient, right? Right. So you put a lot more people on. It's not necessarily they're working on top of each other. So that's why you can only sort of burn so much money at a time.
This crew, you don't have to tell them what to do. They just walk in
Yeah.
and they know what to do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful.
But see that's the value, right? Because what that does is that allows you to scale. He'll scale with you, hopefully, but that allows you to scale. That allows you to do 2, 3, 4, 5 projects at a time, as long as he can handle it, right? Because that's going to be your choke point if you can get that many projects. Now, it's easier said than done.
Yeah. There's times in the market where you can get a lot of projects.
Yeah.
There were times where we were doing like 1 a week for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happened
quite a
was
few.
back in, we went through the REO crisis, right? 2008, 2009, 2010. REO, real estate owned. And so what happened was the banks were they were taking all the properties back and they were listing it with us REO agents, right? Put on the MLS. Well, something happened and they changed their course of action and they started dumping them at the courthouse steps for very low prices. And so we had been an active player at the courthouse steps. So starting in 2009, to about 2010, 11, we were picking up about one a week at the foreclosure auctions because they were unloading them. And the reason why they were doing that is because the banks didn't want to have to take all these properties back. They understood that by taking them back, putting them on the market, it was costing them so much more money to dispose of that asset. And they figured it out. If I just dump them at the courthouse steps, let the investor buy it, I'm going to lose money, but I'm going to get my money back in 2 weeks, as opposed to keeping it, taking it back, REOing it, and I don't get my money back for another 3 or 4 months. So they changed the way they were doing business.
What-
Two things too. So don't necessarily just go with the lowest price contractor. You don't want to get a good deal, but I'm sure you guys can attest. Nothing can send a deal sideways faster than the contractor. You get a pissing match with him or her.
Yep.
Oh,
There's so many things that can go wrong. So
yeah.
don't always go with necessarily the lowest price one. Another good tip I learned along the way: when you're asking contractors for referrals, right? Most anybody would do this. You ask for referrals. They're only going to give you their best clients. The best way to circumvent that: ask for 3 or 4 jobs that are currently in progress. That way you can, ideally, they'll let you come in, talk to the homeowner, how's it going, and keep the job clean and things on time. Again, it's just a good, sneaky way to really see what's going on, because you all know, hey, you should ask for 3 or 4 referrals. They're only going to give you their happiest for everything that's smooth, keep it on their budget, or it's the perfect. And don't be afraid to ask them, tell me about a job that didn't go well. How did you guys handle it? Did you get in a pissing match and walk up the job? Did you guys come to terms? But again, these guys know contractors. You're a fantastic contractor, of course. That they can.
Yeah. I think that's a great point, just observing the contractor's work. Like if you can get into the site and see their work, if the site is a mess, then you have something to consider there, because that person is not attentive to their site. Like usually they're going to have a person who's like their lowest level guy clean up the site at the end of the day. It doesn't have to be like your home is clean, but you just can't have a mess everywhere, because people can't work efficiently in that kind of place. They can't think about the job efficiently, and they can't work efficiently. So just observationally, you can see stuff right away, as well as finishes, if they get to the finish level. You don't have to be an expert to see that a wall is crooked, that the joints aren't right. You don't have to know what tolerances they're supposed to be. If the trim looks real tiny, you just think, oh, this doesn't make any sense. Other experiences with contracting or flipping? Anyone want to bring out questions?
Well, my father owns his contracting business. I just started getting into it for about a year now. But I've seen him growing up. I worked with him since I was younger. And yeah, it's always really important to know who you're putting in the job. Because if not, like you said, it costs money. And it will slow things down tremendously.
Yeah.
I grew up in that business too. Again, you're the general contractor. You hire guys. Some are just better than others. I'm sure your dad said that.
Oh, for sure.
Show up on time, kill it. Others,
Yep.
they've shown up drunk. Their mom died for 4 times this month.
Yeah. Yeah, serious.
Yeah. Season is always, they got to leave at 2 or something.
Yeah, there you go. Any other questions? Yeah.
So the spreadsheets available?
Yeah, you can just
Yeah.
email us.
Well, if you can email us, we're going to email the slideshow
Okay.
and everything in our newsletter.
Oh, yeah, I have both of those in the same folder. I'll be happy to send them to you.
All right.
High value for-
All right. Yep.
You had mentioned that it's your own money, and then you mentioned a fund. You take money from other people as investors, or
We do. We do have investors in the fund.
Okay.
So we control most of the fund. We do have people who get a fixed return. It's a debt fund, and they get a return on it every month, just like as if it were a dividend check. But it's a fixed note return. We give them a note. They give us like $1 million. We give them a note,
Sure.
and we pay them a fixed amount.
regardless of
Mhm.
activity.
And they're spread across all the assets of the fund, which are all loans. And so if one loan doesn't perform like that loan, they never see a bump. We're just paying them, period.
Sure.
I would like to learn more about this tax lien.
Tax liens, yeah. Yeah, that we got into tax liens. You mentioned you have some tax liens. Where are your tax liens?
In Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, I
We
see.
just had an auction last week.
Interesting. I've been to Birmingham too, yeah.
There you go.
So how does that work in Birmingham? Do you have to foreclose them?
Well, they have a 3-year. You have to hold it for 3 years.
Oh.
And of course, you have to pay the taxes on it for 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then after that, then you can go through the foreclosure process. redeem it. So it's a bid down in Birmingham. So
But what's the interest rate?
It's a bid down.
It's a bid. Yeah, you
So
bid
you're
down. So it starts at.
You bid the yield down. You bid the
Yes.
price up and the yield down.
Well, actually, no. You just have to pay what the tax is, but
Uh-huh.
then you get to say, I want to do it at 18%.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful.
So it's
then
like the
you
district.
Get, yeah, you know,
Mhm.
like I said, goes through a random draw. I don't know exactly how it's done, but you know, you get
Yeah.
it, and you know, you pay whatever.
Oh,
the
it's a sealed
taxes
bid as
are.
well.
Yes.
Oh, that's
No
what they
one
do in
else
Montgomery
does the work
County.
here.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep,
And I
yep.
think all of Alabama it goes through Govies. So.
Yep.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so it just depends on which jurisdiction you're in. So like Virginia doesn't do that.
Okay.
Virginia, if you're 3 or 4 years behind, they'll actually auction off the house.
At your house, they'll come to your house. and
Yeah, they'll
sell it
auction
while
off
you're-
the, no, that's,
while
well,
you're in it.
Is it an auction at the highest? So
at the courthouse steps, they'll bid it as a tax sale.
The
Yeah.
auction. Yep.
It's a deed. Yep.
Yeah.
Right. And so in Maryland and DC, same process as Alabama.
Yes. I
Yeah.
know Florida is a
Yeah.
deed state.
Right.
Yeah, I was looking at something.
Yeah.
Stuff
Yeah.
when I was trying to bid
Yeah.
on some stuff in Florida, you know, that's like the highest bidder, which I'm quite sure
Right.
the auction is. And you know, I've done a couple in North Carolina, but
Yep.
they have a 10-day. If you win, even if you win in North Carolina,
Yeah, 10 days to,
somebody
can bid you
somebody
up.
Still come out bid
Or
you
close, yep.
within those next 10 days.
Oh,
And
interesting.
Yeah.
Yep, yep.
So,
Yeah.
Yep.
So
And
we
so-
do them in DC.
Yeah,
We've
so
done it in
DC pays
Prince
8.
George's.
So DC pays 80% interest. Prince George's pays 21%, and then Baltimore City is even higher than that.
Yeah, because I think Baltimore's is going on now. because
Yeah.
I belong to a Texan group that we do.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it's just if
A
you're
lot of
buying,
tracking.
yeah, but if you're buying them in Baltimore City, you better be careful and you better make sure that the tax lien certificate is more than what the property is worth,
Yes.
because there's some pretty bad deals, and you just got to be careful
Yeah.
in Baltimore City. I know
Yeah.
that.
So you true up the tax lien, and then they pay you interest.
Yep.
And then
Yeah.
and maybe in the future
Yep.
you can also get the property.
Yep.
Right. So that's
Called,
correct.
Yeah, it's called a quiet title lawsuit.
Yeah. And so if you very narrowly target
Yep.
the properties you're looking for, you raise your odds of getting one of the quiet titles, which is where the big win is. And the 18% is great. The first year, you're not necessarily getting the 18% around here because you're bidding against other people. You're bidding that yield down. So you're paying more for the tax lien than it's paying 18. So you might get 5% in the first
Right,
year.
yeah, 'cause I-
But if they have been stacking up a lot of debt, then
Subsequent
years, they could take years to pay off, and you're going to get those at 18%. And so if they have a high tax, I mean, it's nice if you have the money, you can buy $100,000 a year
Right,
return at
exactly.
18%, and nothing is going to be more secure in the world because the government's going to pay you back. And then maybe you get the asset at the end if you've thought about it. We have a great asset in Calorama. It's an embassy.
Ethiopian
The
embassy.
Ethiopian embassy. They didn't
moved
pay their
out.
taxes. And so they have some Ukrainian stuff going on in it or whatever.
Stay tuned.
And they're not paying their bills and whatever. They've partly redeemed, but we still get all the we get to buy the tax liens every year, and it's a lot of money, 18%. So it's good all day.
And so the other thing too about these tax liens is that you become, by you owning the tax lien certificate, you become superior on the lien chain.
Exactly.
So
yes.
if there is a first, second mortgage on there, then you move to the head of the line.
Yes.
So
Tying it back to the contracting, they're the worst properties in the world, the ones we go after. They're all blighted and vacant, and the rates are running at the highest rates. And they are really tough to deal with when you take them over because they're in a blighted status. You have to completely sort of permit it, remediate it, and then get the blighted status removed. You got to do that fast because that meter's ticking when you own it too. It's still blighted just because you bought it doesn't mean it's unblighted. You got to get everything done. Permits. It could have been we bought them fire damaged, all the way burned all the way through, and no roof and water all up way in the basement. And you got to move fast because you'll burn up a lot of money in blighted status. They don't give you a break, till it's fixed. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time
thank you guys.
tonight.
Yep. Thank you.
Appreciate it.